No, like if I were you, I wouldn't get that. Here's that. Right? Well, actually, that's a double-edged sword, since there's some like, I don't know. You know what? You have made them before.
Good. All right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our regular session of council. It is Thursday, February the 5th, 2026, 7 p.m. And I will call this meeting to order. I'd like to welcome everyone who is attending not only virtually, but in the gallery this evening. We remind members of disclosures of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. Seeing none noted. Section 3, review of items not listed on the agenda.
No new items, Mr. Mayor. We did have an addendum that included some written support to the delegation tonight.
Thank you. Section 4, announcements for the evening. Thomas, you have 3.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor. So the first one is a reminder that February 16th this year is going to be Family Day, so our municipal offices will be closed. The second announcement is that we have a new clerk starting to cover Megan's upcoming leave of absence. So Alan Bushel will be joining us on February the 17th, and he will be the clerk covering Megan's leave. And the final announcement is that the municipality, in joint with Malahide and Central Elgin, were successful in a significant grant through the Health and Safety Water Stream for rehabilitation of 7 kilometers of the Port Royal Area Secondary Water Supply System transmission main. And I personally want to thank Malahide's staff for leading the process. So Stephen Tripp, Sam Gustafson, and Talia Jones did a wonderful job, and there's significant benefit coming to Bayham ratepayers. So thank you for that.
Thank you for that. We have no presentations this evening, but we have a delegation. I'd like to welcome Barry Wade to come forward and discuss unlicensed Terrion builders. Barry, just to remind you, you've got 10 minutes for your delegation.
Okay, thank you very much. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. I'm speaking to the December 18th, 2025 correspondence received regarding unlicensed new home construction and the subsequent staff report DS 0226 from Scott Sullivan, the Bayham chief building official. On January the 30th, 26th, the ministry issued an Ontario Code News issue 377 requiring municipalities to use an updated application for a permit to construct or demolish buildings effective February 16th, 2026. This new form replaces outdated Terrion references and aligns with the New Home Construction License Act 2017. It also requires applicants to declare whether a project is a new home and whether a builder vendor license is required. This new permit form addresses the loopholes discussed in both my correspondence and staff's report. This new form is mandatory and is not up to the municipality to implement these new standards. Staff is correct that the municipality cannot alter the provisional prescription form, but the municipality can subsequently supplement declarations, implement requirements in their building bylaws, and can configure digital permitting systems such as cloud permits to ensure required fields and declarations are completed before an application is accepted as completed. I also want to address the 1-year myth that someone who lives in a new built home for 1 year can freely sell it without being considered a builder. There is no 1-year rule. What matters is the intent and pattern, not how long someone occupies a home. Terrion and the Home Construction Regulatory Authority assesses 1, whether the home was built for personal use or for sale, or 2, and whether there is a pattern of repeat build, occupy, sell activity, even when occupancy occurs. This repeated pattern, regardless if the home is occupied for 1 year, can still constitute a builder vendor activity required licensing and warranty enrollment. I'm not asking council to create a new enforcement power but to modify the Bayham's building bylaw and procedures so they align with the updated provincial framework. by one, adopting the new provincial permit application form. Two, require an owner builder declaration where no NHCLA builder vendor license number is provided for new home construction, confirming A, the home is for personal use, B, it is not built for sale, and C, the application understands there is no statutory warranty coverage. Number three is authorizing the chief building official to request supporting information where necessary to determine compliance where applicable law for new homes. Number four, adopt a standard referral protocol to Terrion and HCRA where there are reasonable grounds to believe information provided may be false, misleading, or indicative of unlicensed new home construction. And number five, configure BAM's digital permitting system to ensure NHCA fields are completed where applicable and owner builder declarations are attached to building to permit records. Staff's correctly noted in the report that municipalities are not the enforcement authority for builders' license or warranty compliance. I agree with that. But the gap identified in the report is not enforcement, it's visibility and documentation. When applicants default to owner builder without clear declaration or follow-up, illegal builders are able to operate in the shadows, putting purchasers to bear the risk. The step I have outlined tonight don't create new enforcement powers. They give staff better information to the front end, clear records, and a defensible basis to support provincial regulators when concerns arise. In other words, they help staff do what they already are trying to do, reduce unlicensed building activity. I'm not asking for council to adopt that language tonight. I'm not seeking discussion on the hand-ins this evening. They're provided simple as reference material to support council's consideration for next steps. BAM has some incredible builders, and I want to support their businesses. But when they are put at a disadvantage by competing against unlicensed builders, makes for an unfair playing field. Bottom line is, I'm trying to protect them and the residents of BAM. If you have any questions, we'd be more than happy to answer.
Well, thank you very much for that presentation. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Wade? Councillor Chilcott.
Thank you. It's just what triggered this concern of yours for all of a sudden for BAM? Is there something that came up that pushed this forward in brought it to your light, whatever?
The Terrion has been regulating, actually, ever since probably the 70s, they've been trying to regulate unlicensed builders. And since 22, they really started to enforce on these illegal builders. They do a buy and flip and buy and flip. And what's happening is I've had residents contact me that have bought a home through a builder or secondhand through a builder, and finding out there is no warranty on the actual building itself. So they're walking in here thinking that my building was built by a certified builder. He's in there I'm covered for my 7 years of warranty, and they're finding out it's not happening. This just doesn't happen in BAM. It happens everywhere. And so it's just not a specific problem for us. It's throughout. And Terrion is trying to jump on this. But what we can do as a council and as staff is we could nip this in the bud without having issues later on. So if the building inspector could, if we could revamp the application in which a new one is coming out on February 16th, we can also increase adopted measures to just make sure that nothing is squeaking through these loopholes that we're having. So it's just a good standard to proceed on with good quality and making sure our residents who are moving here know that they're getting certified builders to build in their homes.
Supplementary?
Sort of.
Yeah.
So the next thing I wanted to know, okay, so we put all this into effect, but there's nothing stopping a person from building a home themselves and not being registered. So how does putting all this paperwork together in a file help that resident?
In one of the examples I had given you, there was a declaration at the end, which would be included in an actual building permit. And it basically states that I have no intention of reselling this home. I'm not a repeat builder, and I think it was submitted actually in the submission. I think it was on,
I do remember seeing that, thank you. But again, I might not plan on ever selling my home that I live in, but
right.
things happen. And then you sell it, so then, but I'm just trying to figure out how the paper being in a file is going to help this.
well,
I mean, I want to help the
right,
builders, but
but you're not a repeat buy, sell type of person.
no.
Normally, the norm
Not even
is that
close.
if you're in your home for 5 years and you turn around and flip your home, you're not considered a repeat build, sell type of person. And there's no, it doesn't trigger Terry on to say, hey, wait a second here. I think you are flipping these homes for your own benefit. And then what's happening is if you're flipping these and they're not licensed, then it's affecting the people that are buying your home. So it takes the liability off of you as well, making sure that your home was built by a registered builder. So that's, and there's nothing that says you can't build your own house. You can. But it's when you get into the pattern of repeating and selling, repeating and selling, when you create that pattern, then it identifies that there's an issue.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Councilor Froze.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. To you, Barry. I think, and I got my information from a good Mennonite Bayham builder who has just become a Terrion builder, who just took, I think, 10 courses or something and spent $10,000 to do so. And I think you're trying to mislead everybody a little bit because of the warranty. Yes, it is a 1 year bumper to bumper warranty, and after that it's only structural, so your framing and your foundation. So I just wanted to clarify that.
No, so you're not quite correct there. So I was previously a Terrion builder. So what happens is the first year.
Code has probably been updated.
Yes, it has been, and it's more stringent than it was what you're referring to. So what happens is the first year you have a warranty on just miscellaneous drywall pops and cosmetic kind of things, right? Then there's the 2 years, which is on water penetration. So what happens is if there's the roof leaks or there's any penetration to the house, the house is warranted. It could be through the foundation, it could be through any. And then the next level is the 7-year structural. And so if there was a failure, a cracked foundation, roof truss failure, whatever it is, at least we know that the purchaser is covered. So it goes for 1 year, 2 years, and 7 years, but it's all covered by that one policy.
Okay, additional questions from council? Okay, thank you, Barry.
Okay.
We have a motion before us that reads that the delegation from Barry Wade regarding unlicensed Terrion builders be received for information. I have a mover and seconder, please. Moved by Councilor Emerson. Seconded by Councilor Chilcott. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Moving down to section 7, adoption of the minutes of the previous meeting. We have the minutes from January the 15th, 2026, which have been circulated. If there are no errors or omissions, I would entertain a mover and seconder for the following. That the minutes from the regular meeting of council held January the 15th, 2026 be approved as presented. Councilor Emerson will move. Deputy Mayor Weisler will second. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. We have no motions or notice of motion this evening, which brings us to the open forum. First, I would like to introduce or invite Kristen Young to come forward to speak on 11.2A backyard chickens. Kristen, welcome to the podium. Let me get my timer set up here. You'll have 2 minutes for your comments. Whenever you're ready.
Okay, thank you for the work that went into the report and for the opportunity to speak again. I'd like to respectfully challenge the recommendation to deny backyard hens. Bayham is not a dense urban center. It's a municipality defined by space and rural character. Rather than choosing between full approval or full prohibition, I'm asking council to consider a middle ground, a time-limited pilot project for backyard hens. As noted in your report, many surrounding municipalities, most of them larger and denser than Bayham, already allow hen. They've shown that concerns around noise, pests, and animal welfare can be managed through simple, clear rules. If larger, denser municipalities can do this successfully, it stands to reason that Bayham is well positioned to do the same. Concerns about staffing and administration are understandable, but they are solvable. A pilot project can be designed to minimize burden. Limits on participation, complaint-based enforcement consistent with existing bylaws, and a small registration fee to recover administrative costs. I'd also like to briefly touch on public input. Informal polls and discussions on local Facebook groups show strong support for allowing backyard hens. These are people living in Bayham that would be directly affected by this decision. While social media isn't a formal consultation tool, it does provide a snapshot of resident sentiment, and that sentiment supports at least giving this a fair trial. It's also worth noting that backyard hens are not new to Bayham. Many residents have kept hens quietly and responsibly for years without generating complaints or enforcement concerns. The recent surge in bylaw complaints does not reflect a sudden change in community behavior, but rather a concentrated increase in reporting activity. When we strip this down, the concerns being raised, noise, smell, staffing, and complaints, are the same concerns municipalities raised before allowing backyard hens elsewhere. Those concerns were addressed through rules and complaint-based enforcement. I'm asking council to trust the character of this community and consider a pilot project instead of prohibition.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, next up, Suzanne Schlutzhauer. Excuse me for messing that up. Apologize. Speaking on 13.2F, strategic plan progress.
Good evening. Thanks for allowing me to stand up here tonight. I want to raise a point about the strategic plan update and how the plan is being framed in the report. The strategic plan identifies under quality of place initiatives such as rehabilitating the Port Burwell Lighthouse and enhancing the East Beach, with the stated goal of improving visitor experience and increasing the economic benefit of tourism. In the update, however, the East Beach is largely presented as completed through operational measures, parking enforcement, and paid parking revenue, rather than through the tourism and visitor experience improvements described in the plan. The lighthouse, also identified as a strategic plan initiative, is referenced only as ongoing discussions, while the Stratfordville Community Center is presented as a major example of strategic progress, despite not being identified in the strategic plan at all. That distinction matters because strategic plans are meant to guide priorities going forward, not be interpreted after the fact to align with the projects that were never identified as strategic priorities when the plan was adopted. I do want to acknowledge that securing the Port Burwell Vienna water system grant is a genuine strategic success. However, water rates and fees were set based on a $16.9 million project with no grant assumed. About 800 water users carried that financial burden, while major capital projects were deferred, levy funds reallocated, and financial pressures absorbed through higher property taxes. No member of council lives or pays into that system. So my question is straightforward. Now that the grant funding has materially changed the cost of this project, will council commit to a meaningful review and adjustment of water rates and fees for those users before the end of this term?
Thank you for your comments. Moving down to section 11, physical services and emergency services. We have 11.2 reports to council, report BL 0126 by Mark Russell, bylaw enforcement officer regarding backyard chickens in settlement areas.
All right. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Before you, you have the backyard chickens report. On January 16th, 2020, zoning bylaw was amended to include the definition of livestock and added a provision that prohibited livestock in village residential, hamlet residential, and mobile home parks zones. On May 6, 2021, the prohibited animal bylaw was discussed at council and section 2.1 of the bylaw was amended. On October 2nd, 2 delegations were heard from council to allow backyard chickens. Councillor Froese and Councillor Chilcott directed staff to report back with information and the associated changes that allow backyard chickens in residential areas. Bylaw and planning have been working together to research implications of allowing backyard chickens in residential areas. Acadias and the backyard chickens are exempt from the minimum distance separations with the settlement areas, but minimum distance separations must apply outside the settlement areas. Currently, the prohibited animal bylaw prohibits chickens and livestock from residing on properties not zoned agricultural. Some of the concerns with backyard chickens are potential nuisances such as odors, manure, and other food scraps, potential sources of disease, including salmonella, in rare cases of spread of avian influenza to humans. Human health and humane treatment of chickens are not properly cared for or stop producing. Attraction of predators such as rats, coyotes, raccoons, fox, skunks, weasels, and mice. Trespass of chickens on neighboring properties, hazards from motorists when not contained. Housing or disposal of abandoned or seized chickens. Conflict with neighboring pets such as cats or dogs. Noise complaints, complaints about smells from chickens, devaluating the properties, as coops and pens are often located along the property lines. Increased staffing demands for licensing and administration, which would be a burden on a small municipality with only 1 enforcement officer split between 2 municipalities here. Increased complaints and inspections due to complaints. An effort to save time here, only 5 out of the 20 municipalities surveyed allow backyard chickens, and they're Brantford, Kitchener, Norfolk, and Woodstock. All of these municipalities have substantially more resources and officers, and are not sharing resources between 2 municipalities. Should council wish to allow chickens in settlement areas, amendments will be needed to the prohibited animal bylaw, the zoning bylaw. In addition, licensing will also need to be established to regulate chicken pens and enclosures. If approved, staff expect to receive increased complaints about roosters, numbers of chickens, locations of pens, conditions of chickens, odors, noise, setbacks, fencing, trespassing, rodents, conditions of coop, people failing to license, and complaints about properties being devalued. This was often the complaint when I worked in Middlesex Center. We would get a complaint. People would put a $100,000 pool in, and then people would have chickens beside them. So in my opinion, I've seen this over different municipalities that I've worked over, and chickens they don't just really fit in an urban area. They're better in an agricultural area. Bayham has a very active bylaw department, as mentioned, and we only have one bylaw enforcement officer split between 2 municipalities. Staff have concerns that will not be able to handle the increased complaints and additional licensing demands. Staff are recommending that the current practices remain and that we receive this report for information only. At this time, if council has any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
All right, thank you very much for that presentation, Mark. Does anyone have any questions for staff? I have one. Sorry, no, can't permit it. But I have a question for staff. I was intrigued with the presentation from the Ms. Young about what a pilot might look like. Would it be beneficial, Mark, to sit down with Ms. Young and figure out what is envisioned by a pilot?
Through your worship, I don't feel that a pilot would be beneficial for the municipality, as currently right now, a lot of the complaints that really come for chickens are in the spring and summer. The demands that I have on me are incredible between 2 municipalities with increasing complaints. We had almost 200 complaints here and another 65 at Bayham, and then supervising a summer student. The thing is if people are going to make complaints about chickens, often they're going to say, do they have a license? No. If they don't, then they get a license. Then you have to check if they have roosters or not. You get those complaints and the rodent complaints, and it just kind of continues, to be honest with you. And that's the reason why when I've worked in other municipalities, we face these types of concerns. This isn't the first. This isn't unique to Bayham. I've ran into this in Tilsonburg and also in Middlesex Center. And when people purchase a property in a hamlet, they expect that it's going to be exactly that. They're not expecting that it's going to be a farm, or, you know, if they put $100,000 pool in, they're not expecting to have chickens next door. So if there's any more questions, I can.
Councillor Froze.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I would completely agree with you. A pilot project would be amazing to try. I mean, if Brantford and Waterloo can do it, those are cities. We are rural. I would agree with you. A pilot project would be something we should embark on.
Well, to be fair, I was just wondering about exploring it a little more at this point. Councillor Chilcott.
Thank you. I received 4 emails on this, 3 of them for chickens, 1 against. I did see the poll online and it was overwhelmingly in favor of chickens. However, not everyone was from Bayham, so it kind of doesn't work with me. It's not, to me, that's not an accurate depiction, but I do believe that most people would allow chickens. And I think a pilot project would be expensive for the people trying it if it doesn't go through. Like, we're asking them to build coops, put fences up, do a lot of added expenses. And then 6 months, a year later saying, no, we changed our mind. So I think, in my opinion, we should allow 2 to 4 chickens, no roosters, as long as they follow some of the outline that the other municipalities have found have helped. And yeah, I think we're going to get complaints for chickens that are illegal if we don't go with it. And we're going to get them if we do. So there's going to be complaints either way.
All right, thank you for your comments. Councillor Emerson?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and to you. How can I say this? With all due respect to the needs and requirements of staff, there is definitely a trend for people to control their food supply and to eat better quality foods and less processed foods. And food is expensive and people are trying to mitigate the cost of food. I don't think it's an unreasonable request to have a few chickens in your yard as long as they're housed properly. That's, I forgot my second point, but as far as bylaws go for noise and sound and smell, we already have a series of bylaws and everything to regulate that stuff. So a few chickens isn't going to change. And as far as attracting other rodents, I've had tenants that brought more rats to my property than chickens ever would. So I don't think it's about chickens. I think it's about people. So you know, if you're a messy person, you're a messy person. If you don't clean up your garbage, you get rats. In fact, I moved in a house after my tenants and battled rats for 6 months, and there wasn't a chicken on the farm. So I think it's time that we moved with the times and allowed a few chickens in people's yards so they can have control of their food and their economics.
Okay. Well, thank you for your comments. From what I'm aware of, within Elgin County, South Wold has a policy and or bylaw dealing with backyard hens. If council is interested and wants to, would you have a direction for?
Well, I'll
staff
put
to
a
take
motion
look
on the floor.
Take a look at the South Wold model. In addition, from what I've learned in the last few days, Norfolk has additional provisions to deal with the avian influenza. They've required their backyard flocks to be registered or at least notified through the Chicken Farmers of Ontario. So, I mean, there are many permutations and things that can and cannot take place. But I'm interested in taking a look at it a little more. That's my personal view. But if council's interested in taking a look further examination, then this is their opportunity to speak.
I mean, if that's a direction you'd like to take, I'd just soon dispense of it now and not waste staff's time. But if you think that looking at South Wolds or Norfolk's and adopting their bylaws to allow a few chickens for people in a coop contained in their yard. And as far as building $100,000 pool, I'm sorry, but if you got $100,000 for a pool, you have 10,000 for a fence.
Well,
So,
I understand that.
yeah.
The point is, if we're gonna go down this road, then they are gonna have to draft a bylaw anyway.
Yeah,
All right?
yeah.
So if there's a template that's already out there and something that could be adapted for BAM's, that meets BAM's needs, and it's gonna have setbacks, it's gonna have to deal with quality control of not only containing the flock, but also the feed sources and the manure and everything else that goes with it, as is identified in the report. So I'm thinking that if something were to come forward, and I would encourage, speak with Ms. Young, she's made an idea or talking about what her vision was, and perhaps, and I appreciate what Councillor Chilcott is saying, you start a pilot and it fails, you've incurred a lot of expenses to those who wanted to go down this road. It's not a fairness issue. I get it. Councillor Chilcott.
So that being said, I'd like to make a motion that staff work on a bylaw that works with the other communities by reviewing them and bring it back to council for review.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I would like to add to that to include somebody from the public, like the speaker here.
Mhm.
Miss Young, was that name?
That's who made
Yeah.
the presentation this evening.
To see if whatever policy we come up with is palatable to those people that desire to have chickens. And one other point while I'm thinking of it, if a person has chickens, they most likely have compost, and it would be a great addition.
Mhm.
So I don't even think waste is a major issue from 4 chickens. I think it's a beneficial thing because you need the nitrogen to break down the organic matter.
I understand that, but we have had incidences where there were some poorly kept flocks,
Yeah,
all right, within our
Yeah.
villages.
but there's no doubt, there's gonna be people that have chickens anyway, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's time to move forward, and come up with some kind of palatable policy for a small backyard flock.
I
So
would
do you
agree.
want to put that motion together? But I really think we need to add somebody to get an opinion whether or not that's palatable from the public.
Through your worship, in the past, like when I worked in Tilsonburg, we did a public consultation before. So
All right.
basically what I could do is a public consultation, draft, what the bylaw is and some shortcuts,
Mhm.
and then submit that out to the public and receive comments on that. And then we can make adjustments to the bylaw based off those comments.
That sounds like a good plan. We've got a public meeting we need to go to right now.
So-
But
So do we
Do we
not?
want to do this motion
Finish-
now then?
finish this motion,
All right.
Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just need a specification on this. We can do the public consultation. That's fine. And the direction for amendments or establishing the appropriate bylaws is something that we can also look into. Does council want to put a cap on the number of hens?
Well, I would think that would be part of the.
I would
if you
think
Bring
too.
it back to us.
Okay.
Yeah.
So council doesn't want to establish that now. You want to leave it open to the public discussion first.
Considering that, an egg, maybe a chicken lays 0.8 eggs a day, if you wanted to feed somebody an egg every day, you probably need half a dozen,
Well,
right?
I'd be thinking that might be an upper limit, but.
Yeah.
still, something to think about.
Yeah, I don't think 6 is. too
But
much.
4 chickens, it's 3 eggs. Right?
I-
I'd eat
So
that.
don't eat eggs every day.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
So you've got something drafted?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I do. So the motion would be that report BL 0126, three backyard chickens in settlement areas be received for information, and that staff be directed to investigate amendments to and the establishment of the appropriate bylaws to permit hens in urban areas in Bayham, including consideration of the establishment of a licensing, inspection, and enforcement protocol.
All right, mover. I got Counselor Chilcott, I'll take Counselor Emerson. All in favor? That is carried. Okay. We are going to recess from this regular meeting in order to move into a statutory planning meeting. We are a little late, but I will call this meeting to order at 7:34 PM. I'll remind members of any disclosure of pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof. We have 4 issues to deal with this evening. The first deals with a proposed zoning bylaw amendment, ZBA 2025, Build Ontario Developments 11265 Plank Road. The purpose of this bylaw amendment is to rezone the subject property from a hamlet residential withholding, that's an HR H2 zone, to hamlet residential withholding HR H2 XX zone to permit a site-specific zoning over the noted proposed lots as follows. Lot 37, Section 9.12 XX to permit the front line to be deemed the longer boundary line abutting a street along a corner lot, whereas Section 2 defines the front lot line to be shorter boundary line abutting the street for a corner lot. Lots 7 to 14 and 33, Section 9.12 XX to permit a minimum lot frontage of 14.6 meters, whereas Section 9.3 requires a minimum lot frontage of 20 meters. Lots 22 to 27, 30, 31, 38, and 39. Section 9.12 XX to permit a maximum lot coverage of 35%, whereas Section 9.4 requires a maximum lot coverage of 30%. The subject property is known as 11265 Plank Road, west side and south of Eden Line. A future application to remove the holding provisions is anticipated after draft plan approval of application 34T BA 2503 is granted and the requirements of the holding provision has been fulfilled. The effect of this bylaw is to permit the development of the lands in accordance with draft plan of subdivision application 34T BA 2503, where corner lot 37 is to be oriented along the longer street line rather than the shorter street line, lots 7 to 14 and 33 to have a smaller lot frontage than required, and lots 22 to 27, 30, 31, 38, and 39 to have a greater lot coverage than required under the hamlet residential zone. At this point, I would invite any public participation on this particular application. Anyone wishing to speak to this, please attend the podium and sign in. Pardon? Yes. Mr. Newbell? Where? Ah. Does Ush wish to speak to this?
No, that summarizes, through you, Mr. Chair, no, that summarizes the application. It's site-specific zoning to match the layout of the draft plan.
All right, thank you very much for your comments. Anyone else wish to speak to this? Okay. I would note that there is no correspondence with this application and no other business. Let's move on with the adjournment, that the zoning bylaw be considered at a future meeting of council, and that pursuant to Planning Act requirements, the public meeting for zoning application ZBA 2025 is now complete at 7:38 p.m. Do we have a mover and seconder for that? Deputy Mayor Weisler? Councillor Froese, all in favor? That is carried. Moving on with application B, call this meeting to order at 7:38 p.m. Remind members of any disclosures of pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof. This application deals with a proposed zoning bylaw amendment ZBA 2525 Neufeld at 54304 Eden Line. The purpose of this bylaw amendment is to rezone the subject property from a dual hamlet residential HR zone and urban industrial M4 zone to a site-specific dual hamlet residential HR XX zone and an urban industrial M4 XX zone with new zoning boundaries to reflect the uses existing on the property and to permit an addition to the existing residential dwelling, which requires the following provisions. Section 9.2 XX to permit an ARU with a maximum gross floor area of 46% of the primary dwelling unit, whereas a maximum of 40% is required under Section 4.59E. Section 9.2XX to permit a setback of 24.0 meters to the center line of County Road 44, known as Eden Line, whereas a setback of 26.0 meters is required under Section 4.221B. Section 23.13.XX to permit a lot frontage of 26 meters in an M4 zone with no municipal water or sanitary services, whereas a minimum of 30 meters is required under Section 23.4. The subject property is known as 54304 Eden Line, north side and east of Culloden Road. The effect of this bylaw is to adjust the current boundary between the M4 and HR zones within the subject property to permit an additional residential unit attached to the existing dwelling and recognize the location of the existing industrial business, while also permitting an ARU that exceeds the maximum floor area requirements and recognizing the existing deficient setback to a county road. At this point, I will invite any public participation. Does anyone from the public wish to speak to this application? Mr. Neufeld, would you like to speak to this application, or are you comfortable with it?
As far as I know, I'm comfortable with it.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak to this application? All right, I would note then that there is no correspondence or other business with this application, which brings us to the adjournment. That the zoning bylaw be considered at a future meeting of council, and that pursuant to Planning Act requirements, the public meeting for zoning application ZBA 2525 is now complete at 7:42 p.m. Do I have a mover and seconder for that? Deputy Mayor Weisler and Councillor Chilcott, all in favor? Opposed?
I put my hand up.
Okay, carried. Which brings us to application C. Now we'll call this public meeting to order at 7:42 p.m. I'll remind members of any disclosures of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. This application is a proposed zoning bylaw amendment ZBA 0126 Wall at 23 Oak Street. Purpose of this bylaw amendment is to rezone the subject property from a residential R1 zone to a site-specific residential R1 XX zone to permit a new accessory building, which requires the additional following provisions. Section 10.12 XX to permit a maximum height for an accessory building of 7.0 meters, whereas a maximum height of 4.5 meters is required under Section 10.11B. Section 10.12 XX to permit a maximum floor area for an accessory building of 149 square meters, where a maximum floor area of 75 square meters is required under Section 10.11C. Subject property is known as 23 Oak Street, west side and south of Ann Street. The effect of this bylaw is to permit the construction of a new accessory building for residential personal use that exceeds the maximum height and floor area requirements for an accessory building. And at this point, I will invite any public participation on this file.
I'd like to make a comment.
Please come forward, sign in at the podium, please, and offer your comments.
Sign in with
Is there a pen?
no pen. Yeah. Thank you. My name is Paul Wood. I live at 26 Oak Street.
Thank you.
And my opinion on this is that building is not an accessory building. 1,600 square feet, or actually over 1,600 square feet, is more than the size of my house. And 7 meters high is over 21 feet. That means he's gonna probably he's either gonna put a second story in there, which I don't know how he's gonna get his boat or his skidoo or sea-doo or whatever else he has, and they're up to that second floor. If he's not, that's gonna be a doorway to put a large vehicle in there. So that's just my comment
Right.
on it. I'd like to see it kept to what it should be for a residential area.
Thank you for your comments. Does anyone else from the public wish to participate on this file?
Sorry.
No worries. Thank you. And I would note that there is no correspondence or other business with this application, which brings us to the adjournment. That the zoning bylaw be considered at a future meeting of council, and that pursuant to the Planning Act requirements, the public meeting for zoning application ZBA 0126 is now complete at 7:45 PM. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Emerson, Deputy Mayor Weisler. All in favor? And that's carried. Which brings us to application D. Call this meeting to order at 7:46 PM. Again, remind members of any disclosure of pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof. Being none noted. This application deals with a proposed zoning bylaw amendment ZBA 0226 Gunther at 53900 Heritage Line. Purpose of this bylaw amendment is to rezone the subject property from a hamlet residential withholding provisions, HR H2, H3 zone to a site-specific hamlet residential RRXX zone to permit a new single detached dwelling, which requires the additional following provisions. Section 9.12.XX to permit a minimum rear yard of 8.2 meters, whereas a minimum rear yard of 9.0 meters is required under section 9.10. The following holding provisions are proposed to be removed as part of the application. Section 3.3BH2 purpose. To ensure orderly development, a subdivision agreement with the municipality which addresses financial and servicing impacts of new development to the municipality will be required prior to removal of the H2 zone symbol. Section 3.3CH3 purpose. To ensure the mitigation of impacts to natural heritage features and their ecological functions, an environmental impact study will be required prior to the removal of the H3 zone symbol. Subject property known as 53900 Heritage Line, north side and south of Richmond Road. The effect of this bylaw is to permit the construction of a new single detached dwelling with a reduced yard setback within the hamlet residential zone and to remove holding provisions that are deemed to no longer be required as the site is not suitable for subdivision and is no longer within the regulated area of the Long Point Region Conservation Authority. At this point, I'll invite any public participation on this application. See or note that there is no public participation, no correspondence or other business. Brings us to the adjournment. That the zoning bylaw be considered at a future meeting of council and that pursuant to the Planning Act requirements, the public meeting for zoning application ZBA 0226 is now complete at 7:48 PM. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Chilcott and Councillor Emerson, all in favor. That is carried. Thank you. Now return to our regular agenda. We left off at 11.2B, so report BL 0226 by Mark Russell, bylaw enforcement officer regarding the 2025 annual summary report. Mark.
Great, well, thank you. Since 2023, the municipality of Bayham has provided shared services with the township of Malahide. This report for bylaw enforcement is for 2025. Between January 1st and December 31st. The responsibility of the bylaw enforcement officer includes enforcing municipal bylaws, reviewing and updating bylaws, drafting policies and procedures related to bylaw enforcement, supervising the seasonal bylaw enforcement officer, and managing the parking operations for the municipality. Bylaw enforcement in Bayham is governed by policies, which has a multi-step process and focuses on customer service approach to enforcement. Occasionally, charges or fines are issued, however, it is rare, and it's the last course of action. As our main objective is to gain education and to give out education and obtain voluntary compliance. Over the past year, 10 fines were issued and over 5 properties, and most of these properties have come into compliance. Bylaws received 192 complaints in 2025, which is an increase from last year's numbers of 164 complaints with a 90% closure rate. Most of these complaints were from Ward 1, with 60% of all complaints coming from Port Burwell, Vienna, for 116 complaints out of the 192 total complaints, and is followed by other settlement areas. Parking and zoning complaints have risen from 2024 numbers, and the number of lot maintenance complaints have decreased substantially. In 2025, we issued 526 tickets for parking enforcement, and 27 of these tickets were issued outside of the beach zone. So primarily the enforcement is in Port Burwell around the beach zone. Most of these in conclusion, 2025 was a very busy year again for bylaw, with increased complaints in both municipalities and navigating the challenges with the paid parking pilot program. Bylaw enforcement staff are pleased with all the accomplishments that have occurred, and some highlights include the approval of paid parking for the East Beach, the approval of a new traffic and parking bylaw with approved set fines, hiring, training, and managing seasonal bylaw enforcement officer. Paid parking pilot program was a success and raised substantial revenues, and managed a higher volume of files for both municipalities while covering days off for beach enforcement. So at this point, I'm going to ask council just to receive this report for information, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask.
All right, thank you, Mark, for that presentation. Does anyone have any questions for the bylaw officer? Councilor Froese.
Yes, thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. If I may, Mark, how many times did you call the OPP to assist you in 2025?
Respectfully, I don't have that information, but I do contact the OPP when assistance is needed, and they're there to keep the peace. That being said, the OPP could be called for situations where a person is verbally abusive to me, or threatens me, or there's known criminal history on the person. And I also want to make it note that some of the properties that I have attended with the OPP on multiple occasions, OPP also has requirements to bring 2 officers for. So they're not sending 1 person, they're sending 2.
All right.
If I may, Mr. Mayor,
Councilor Froese.
can we just put this report on the table until he has such information?
Are you requesting follow-up information on the
Yes, sir.
number of interactions with the OPP through the?
Yes, sir.
Would you be willing to file this report and just request as part of the motion?
If you're asking me, yes.
Looking to staff.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I believe Councillor Froese, are you inquiring about the number of calls for OPP support and trying to get some information about how that might impact our OPP cost in 2025?
Not only that, our budget as well, and more to that. I guess I have a deep concern if there's a lot of calls to assist the OPP officer in a designated staff person from Bayham, and he doesn't feel safe to approach a lot of our citizens at when there's a bylaw call. I guess I'm really concerned that it makes our Bayham people very dangerous. And so that's why that's if I'm just trying to share my concern, and if there's a lot of calls, then we have a huge problem, I guess, with very many dangerous people in Bayham, or the
Mr. Mayor,
opposite.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, we have a one-person bylaw department, and it's commonplace in other municipalities that for properties that have a history, to send to bylaw officers. Now, unfortunately, we don't have a bylaw office that's big enough to do that, so we have to rely on outside support. So that often means that, when it comes to certain properties that have a history, either history with us or a history with the OPP, if we are going out, then we request that support. I believe during the budget discussion, I noted that the formula that generally funds the OPP is not something that is specific to Bayham. It's province-wide, and it's based upon, in part, the number of calls for service across the entire province. Bayham is a very small portion of that. We're about 0.2% of the overall province. So if the number of calls across the province are up, that will drag up Bayham's portion. And I believe, if I recall the discussion correctly, over the last few years, our proportion has actually decreased. Now, I don't want to put the treasurer on the spot because his variance report will be coming to the next meeting and we're still closing up year end. But last I checked, I believe that our police budget for the year was actually in line with what we had budgeted for, despite, a potential reliance on the OPP to provide that outside support for certain calls. That information will be coming to the next meeting to confirm.
Can I just add something,
Please,
Mayor?
Mark.
Respectfully, your worship, Councillor Froese, I've done bylaw enforcement for 20 years, and I only engage with the OPP if I feel it's a safety issue. That being said, like I said, you are out at a rural area, and if somebody has a history of violence and engages in you in a threatening tone or out and out threatens you, I think it's prudent that the officer leave and reattend with the OPP. That doesn't matter if you were in a larger municipality such as Tillsonburg. When those situations happen, the officer would disengage and they would contact OPP. They wouldn't send a second officer into a situation and have two people be in a potentially dangerous situation. That's pretty standard among most municipalities.
All right. Thank you for those comments. Councilor Froese.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I guess that's exactly my point. If in the last 3 years, our OPP to assist in bylaw complaints have increased from, and I'm just gonna shoot numbers, okay? Because it's not in the report, from 10 to 60, let's just say, or whatever the number may be. I don't think it's our citizens that have become more dangerous. I think it's a different approach that may be required. I'm just spitballing here because I don't know the numbers. So you have made my point. Thank you, Mark.
Question
Okay.
for you. through you,
Councilor
Mr.
Emerson.
Mayor. At what point would the increase in bylaw complaints and possibility of more time requirement from you that you do become a full-time and not shared with Malahide because you're too busy? It's kind of like, can we expand the role and retain Mark full-time in this municipality? There has to be a time or a number of complaints. If they gone up in Malahide and they come up for here, that's more than he can handle. So when do you become 100% for us? That's my question.
Or alternatively, are you looking at the threshold of whereby additional resources need to be allocated?
Well, yeah, I guess what I'd prefer to have, more to take care of Bayham's needs.
Well, I understand, but still, it's additional resources that are going to be required. That's a question. I don't know what that threshold is. Thinking though, if you wish, from where we came from with 30% of the former bylaw arrangement coming off the fire chief's desk. And we're utilizing roughly 60% of the allocation of bylaw time at this point.
Yes, I can confirm that, Mr. Mayor. So we were using approximately 33% of the fire chief's time. We are approximately 67% of Mark's time. So there's a significant increase there. Part of it is the increase in complaints, and part of it is simply increased responsiveness and the resources that we have here. The closure rate over the last 3 years has increased significantly, and we've consistently been over 90% under previously Stephen Miller and now Mark Russell. It's a fair question about resourcing, particularly if we're going to look at, expanding to say, backyard chickens and the potential for additional enforcement requirements. That is something that we are going to have to look at. And the increased number of complaints from Malahide will also put a burden on as well. So that will have to be a discussion that I have with my counterpart at Malahide about what sort of resourcing that they'd like to see if they're happy with the level of service so far. And then we'll have to look at how things go in 2026 and monitor that.
All right.
Supplementary, Mr. Mayor. It was a complimentary question, and at 67%, and he's doing a great job and all that stuff. And I have a lot of respect for Mark. It's just that I maybe would be better to keep him, expand the role, and not share, actually. They can, if you want to stay in the shared service, hire somebody else from Bayham, and that's what I'm saying. It was a complimentary question. Don't get me wrong. So
Didn't take it that way. I'm
Yeah.
just wondering, I'm just not sure that we've hit that threshold where it warrants the additional resource allocation. That's all.
Yeah.
And we'll have to look for some advice coming forward for that. All right, council, we have a report before us that the recommendation is to receive for information. There's been a request for additional information. How do you wish to handle that?
Mr. Mayor, if I may, as I noted, the treasurer is bringing his Q4 variance report to the next meeting when we talk about surpluses and some of his other reports that he usually brings forward in February. That Q4 variance report will include our year end for policing, and we can confirm what our budget was at that time to see if it was in compliance or in variance with what was originally approved by council. So I'm sure we can have a little bit of that discussion around policing costs at that time.
Okay, will that satisfy you, Councillor Rose?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. No, it will not. I am concerned that our citizens have become very dangerous. Actually, no, I'm not, because I know they haven't. But I think there needs to be some clarification there. So it will not.
And through your worship, can I add something?
Mark, please.
Majority of the police calls are actually for a handful of properties. And they're constantly visited by the OPP, whether it's for a bylaw enforcement issue or if it's for another issue that they have. And what tells me is if OPP is showing up with 2 officers, they have a policy on that there's certain properties in town that they have 2 officer mandatories. That means that person is dangerous or has a criminal history. And it wouldn't be prudent, in my opinion, to send myself there by myself, knowing that they're sending 2 officers themselves.
Yeah, I'm not denying any of that.
Councillor Froese, what you're asking for is you're asking for staff to put themselves in harm's way in known properties where OPP send 2 officers there. That's what you're asking.
Well, I'm not sure if that's what it is, but I think
Not at all.
I think there have been a lot of stories out in the community about a lot of times when the OP have been called in. And Mark, you've given some piece of the puzzle right there that it's a handful, but multiple calls.
Yes.
So that's what's going on.
That's correct.
Through
Councillor Emerson.
Through Mr. Mayor, I think it's just a call for clarity. I don't think it's a personal attack. I don't think anything. If there is no issue, then there shouldn't be any problem with providing the information.
And I think what Thomas has indicated with the fourth quarter or the quarterly variance report coming forward and the year ends, we'll be able to look at what the budgeted OPP costing was versus what the actual expenditure was to find out if there is an alignment or if there is perhaps an over expenditure and where did that come from? And I think that would help chase that down. Yeah. Counselor Chilcott.
Will the report split out how many were for bylaw enforcement?
I don't believe
Because I
it
think
does.
that's what Dan's looking for, is to find out how many bylaw enforcement actions happened with police intervention or police assistance. That's all he's asking for, is a number.
We'd have to requisition that from the OPP. That would be separate from a variance
Can we
report.
know that if our bylaw officer went out and had to take police with him?
But would we get an invoice showing the number of calls that come out? Not generally. We'd have to get a detailed invoice from them. Normally, that would be for things like base costs and calls for service, which are formulaic. Other calls for service are going to be a very small portion of the police budget.
It,
Counselor Emerson.
so for, if this is, a handful of properties, shouldn't, and there is a complaint against those properties, isn't it just prudent to skip the bylaw process and go straight to the OPP then? If there's a risk, why don't we just say, because wasn't there that incident in Welland or whatever where somebody got dropped going into the place, like motorcycle gang place bylaw officer or something? Like, I don't want to put you in harm's way. So if there is these 5, 6, 7 dozen properties in Bayham, just make it mandatory call to the OPP. Skip the process.
I'm not sure the OPP are going to respond to a yard maintenance issue.
Well, if it's that dangerous and it's on file, they have to have two, maybe they should.
That's the point that the bylaw officer is making, is that if it's on file that this is a questionable property and he has to attend on a particular bylaw issue, then he's requiring backup. That's what it's about. It's a health and safety issue as well. How difficult is it to provide a number, give it to the treasurer?
I could look in the numbers, but like I said, it's a handful of properties that are responsible for a majority of them, so majority of the calls. Typically, I leave a property if someone starts yelling and screaming at me or being abusive, or if they openly threaten me or try to run me over with a vehicle, which has happened.
Yes.
Other instance where we've had the OPP involved was a large campground, and OPP was responsible for sending the amount of officers that they sent. And at that, they had a team and they did a risk assessment and decided how many officers would be assigned to that.
Okay, appreciate your comments. All right, council, again, we have a motion before us, a draft one. If you wish to make amendments to it, you can. I will read this. That report BL 0226 regarding 2025 bylaw enforcement services annual report be received for information. Okay. Mr. James, have you been following the conversation?
I have, your worship. I've been listening along and pulling documents off the server. So a couple items that can clarify Councillor Froze's request. In our annual OPP billing that we get a defined list of items. Bylaw is in there. The definition of what is defined as bylaw might be the blurry on what is actually our definition of bylaw versus fire, dog, property, civil dispute. So there's some of that. We have the call logs. As for our billing year over year, what we budgeted for a 25 actual billing to our budget is actually less. And it's less because we received additional in-year grants from the province for different rebates. So our billing schedule matched our budget schedule, but we received additional grants that the province came back that actually dropped our OPP billing down 10,000 to budget. The billing summary is provided to myself, the CAO, and the mayor every year before we put it into our budget. So we have how the call logs have worked for 25, projected for 26, 24, 23, and they give a 5-year running average. If this is something that you guys want to see in a future staff report, we can incorporate it. Obviously, there'll be certain things that have to be redacted and confidential stuff that relates to individual property matters. If that's what council's looking for, staff could get that and give that support to Mark.
That additional billing, that would also include response to fire calls.
It has fire, it has hitting a deer, it has a couple building code issues,
Yes.
it's got distressed motor vehicle, it's got additional assistance to the public, which could be crowd control, events, assistance to BAM for roads, assistance to BAM for fire. So what staff could do is we could get a bit of a more broader definition on some of those ones that have those open definitions. Years ago, when I first started, I actually would go up annually and see the inspector and go through our year-over-year changes to determine what steps that we could come back to council in our budget time to implement to, in essence, what Councillor Froese is saying, keep our costs controlled. That's what Councillor Froese is really getting at, to cost controlment and level of service. I know in the operating you had talked about cost controlment.
I don't think that.
But no, there is the detailed report.
All right. Question I was getting at is it's really an aggregate number that you're going to get. You're not going to have it defined out, are you?
Not to the dollar amount that's costing. You get only the number of calls. You don't get the duration. You don't get how many officers. You get the service calls.
Right. Fair enough. Okay. Again, council, draft motion has been read. Is anyone willing to move and second or amend? Deputy Mayor. That's a move? All right. Do we have a seconder? Second call for a seconder. Motion dies. What would you like to do, council? You need to close off this file. Councillor Chilcott.
I think if you add in there, as you suggested originally, that they come back with a number of events that bylaw required police intervention, I think that would make a good motion and it would be accepted.
I'm going to look to the clerk here. The original motion was not even made it to the floor, and that motion with an addition stand.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yeah, technically it is a new motion because there is an addition to it, so.
Right.
You had mentioned earlier.
I mentioned it and no one took me up on it. All right. You getting crafted? All right.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, motion that would read that report BL 0226 2025 bylaw enforcement service annual report be received for information, and that staff be directed to return to council with information pertaining to the number of calls for OPP support for bylaw enforcement matters.
With that motion being read, do we have a mover and seconder? Councillor Chilcott. Councillor Froese. All in favor? Opposed? I had two.
No, you get three.
Okay, then that's carried. All right, moving on to section 12, development services, sustainability and conservation, 12.1 correspondence, 12.1.1 to receive for information, 5 items. Item A, notice of public meeting regarding ZBA 2025 Build Ontario Developments 11-265 Plank Road. Item B, notice of public meeting regarding ZBA 2525 Neufeld at 54304 Eden Line. Item C, notice of public meeting regarding ZBA 0126 Wall at 23 Oak Street. Item D, notice of public meeting regarding ZBA 0226 Gunther at 53900 Heritage Line. And item E, notice of public meeting regarding final draft of official plan and municipality of BAM official plan review. Any questions from members of council? And I need a mover and seconder for the following, that items 12.11A through E be received for information. Counselor Emerson will move. Counselor Chilcott will second. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. 12.2 reports to council. We have report DS 0226 by Scott Sutherland, Chief Building Official regarding unlicensed Terrion builders. Good evening, Scott.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Yes, it's a night before his report about illegal building. I'll try to explain how someone has the ability to build and sell homes without being licensed under the new Home Construction Licensing Act and without enrolling the home in the new home warranty program with Terrion. This activity is commonly referred to as illegal building and selling. Municipal building departments in Ontario have long been caught between the issuance of building permits and the enforcement of illegal building and selling. While municipalities are responsible for issuing building permits under the Building Code Act, they are not the enforcement authority for builder licensing under the new Home Construction Licensing Act or warranty compliance under the Ontario New Home Warranty Plan Act. Enforcement for this is through the Home Construction Regulatory Authority. Currently today, and at the time of the report was written, if someone was to apply for a building permit either in person with a paper application or through Cloud Permit Portal, they would have the option to input builder's information, although is not required. However, they are required to confirm if the proposed construction is for a new home as defined in the New Home Warranty Plan Act. Under the Act, a home is generally defined as a self-contained one-family dwelling, either attached or detached to one or more others by one or more common walls, or a building composed of more than one and not more than two self-contained one-family dwellings under one ownership. If the applicant checks no to this, they would then move on and complete the rest of the application. If the applicant checks yes, they would need to confirm if registration is required under the Ontario New Home Warranties Plan Act. If they check yes, they would then be required to provide the registration number. These fields are mandatory on the Cloud Permit Portal for the application to be accepted. If they check no, in practice, municipal building departments assume that the applicant is an owner builder and the building permit is issued accordingly. It is worth noting that the reference to the Ontario New Home Warranties Plan Act and the registration number on the current provincially mandated application form is out of date and should reference the New Home Construction Licensing Act and license number instead. The owner builder exception allows for an individual to construct their own home for their own use and occupation while being exempt from licensing and warranty requirements. Owner builders need to be aware that the home is not eligible for statutory warranty coverage under the Ontario New Home Warranties Plan Act, and they assume full responsibility as a builder, including project management, workplace safety, supervising trades, obtaining permits, etc. Issues arise when unlicensed builders operating in the shadows convince homeowners to name themselves as as owner builders on the permit application, even though the builder is doing the actual work. Homeowners are sometimes promised savings, but they're rarely aware of the risk they're taking on. It also becomes a problem when homes constructed under the under the owner builder exemption are sold prior to any significant occupancy. Even though all new home construction requires the same municipal building permit inspections, the risk of substandard work by an unlicensed builder who hasn't demonstrated competency through the HCRA licensing is now borne by the subsequent purchaser that has no warranty to rely on. As municipal building departments are not the enforcement authority, illegal building and selling activities are not closely tracked internally, although a report of all new home construction is provided to Terrion monthly. The most effective tools for enforcing is reporting suspected illegal building and selling activity directly to the HCRA through its complaint process, which allows them to investigate and track patterns of non-compliance. Reporting can be done by any person that suspects illegal building and selling. The public is encouraged to verify builders through the HCRA licensing building directory prior to constructing or purchasing a new home. Doing your own due diligence and ensuring a builder is properly licensed significantly reduces risk in the future. I have been made aware that the Ministry of Public and Business Service Delivery has promised a public consultation on solutions to legal building and selling created with the input and support of HCRA, building officials, home builders, and consumer advocates. However, there's no specific date set for this consultation's release. Although the current provincial permit application form cannot be altered, since the report was written, information from the province has been circulated through Code News that as of February 16th, 2026, the revised building permit application form will need to be used. The revised form updates the previously mentioned outdated home construction licensing section on the form and now references the new Construction Licensing Act, new Home Construction Licensing Act, and license number. This is essentially the same information that was required previously, but now it references the current regulatory act. The revised application also has a small editorial change that recommends providing builder information if it is known at the time of the application instead of leaving it as optional. Cloud Permit has confirmed that the online portal will reflect these changes as of February 16th. That being said, as a result of the revised application, there's no change to the enforcement authority. Some municipalities have tried to help address these issues by requiring a letter from the owner confirming owner-builder status when no license number is provided. While the letter does not create enforcement authority for the municipality, it establishes a written declaration of intent that can be provided to the HCRA as supporting documentation if they were to reach out to the municipality as part of their investigations. To ensure consistency and authority, should this requirement be a recommendation of council, it should be formally established within the municipal building bylaw rather than applied administratively. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you for your report, Scott. Any questions for the CBO? Scott, in your opinion, with the changes coming to the online portal and the incorporation of the new forms and the requirement of reporting the builder's registration and whatever else, is there a requirement for a subsequent declaration?
There's no requirement for it. I just, there's no huge benefit to the municipality. It just helps HCRA in their investigation if they were to look into one of these illegal builders by way of like through their complaint portal.
What, how would it be incorporated into with your forms? Because this would almost, if you were looking for a declaration, be almost an addition to the form, but we can't do that.
Yeah, we can't formally change the application form. It'd have to be an additional document that, like I mentioned, would have to be kind of adopted through a change to the building bylaw.
Okay. Just trying to wrap my head around process. Not looking to increase red tape, but trying to find a way. Okay. Any additional questions? All right, seeing none, we have a draft motion before us that reads the report DS 0226 regarding unlicensed Terrion builders. Follow-up from December 18th, 2025, item 13.12B be received for information. Do I have a mover and seconder? Councillor Emerson will move. Councillor Chilcott seconds. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Moving on with section 13, Finance and Administration, 13.11 correspondence, and 13.11 to receive for information. Town of Fort Frances regarding a call on the province of Ontario to establish an Ontario Airport Capital Assistance Program. And item B, the Township of Southgate regarding the OMERS Bill 68. Does anyone have any questions on this correspondence? I need a mover and seconder for the following, that items 13.11A and B be received for information. Deputy Mayor Weisler, Councillor Chilcott. All in favor? Carried. 13.2, reports to council, report TR 0226 by Lauren James, Treasurer, regarding the 2027 budget schedule. Lauren?
Good evening, Your Worship, members of council. Before you is our 2027 budget schedule. Our effective budget consultation period kicks off today and runs until September 30th, 2026, with a proposed capital budget meeting October 6th, depending council status as lame duck. Then our 2027 levy supported operating budget, January the 5th, with a corresponding open house January 21st. This follows the same structure that we've been doing for the last 10 years. The same driver still exists. We'll be posting the notices at the same locations we have in the past: municipal office, library locations, municipal website, Voyant. Also will be in the August newsletter for the tax bills. And hopefully we'll have a few of these budgetary impacts lessened by the time we have our draft budget for 27, especially hopefully there's new outcome on Kuzma, tariff compliance issues with the United States, and fluctuations in foreign exchange currency. If council has any questions on the report, I gladly take them.
All right, thank you for that report, Lauren. Does anyone have any questions for the treasurer? All right, then we have a motion that reads a report TR 0226 regarding the 2027 budget schedule be received for information, and that the proposed budget guidelines be approved, and that the following dates be established for the 2027 budget process. February the 5th to September 30th, 2026, budget public consultation period. Tuesday, October 6th, 2026, 2027 to 2036, capital budget meeting. Tuesday, January the 5th, 2027 is the 2027 operating budget meeting. And then Thursday, January the 21st, 2027 is the budget open house. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Emerson, Councillor Chilcott will second. All in favor? Carried. Carrying on with item B, TR 0326 by Lauren James, Treasurer, regarding the 2025 Public Sector Salary Disclosures Act. Lauren, please.
Thank you again, Your Worship. Standard year-end compliance boiler report. Our Public Sector Salary Disclosure Act is requirement under the 1995 Sunshine Act that the province brought out. Just so council has an idea, in 1995, this was a threshold of 100K. It has never been indexed. If we were working on today's dollar amount, it would be 181, so 181,000, which would only have 2 individuals on this list, not the current complement of 9. If council has any questions, I'll gladly answer them.
Thank you for that report, Lauren. Does anyone have any questions? Councillor Emerson.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, can we do like other municipalities and ask for a resolution or a suggestion to the provincial government to raise that limit to account for cost of inflation?
I think we have in the past, have we not? Yeah.
Okay.
We have. Yeah. Any other questions? I suppose I should have been fair, Councillor Emerson. We have in the past. Did you wish to do it again?
Yeah, I would actually.
All right.
And then maybe some other municipalities will endorse it.
Well, just to urge the
Yeah.
proposed update.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, we have a motion then that staff are busy crafting. Councillor Emerson will do a jig while we're waiting.
Not yet. Granddaughter hasn't taught me all the steps, but I'll have them down for St. Patrick's Day.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Motion would read that report TR 326 for 2025 Public Sector Salary Disclosure Act be received for information and that correspondence be sent to the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing and other Elgin County municipalities requesting support to formally index the $100,000 sunshine list threshold to current year's values.
Thank you. Mover and seconder, please. Counselor Emerson will move. Counselor Froese will second. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Item C, report TR 0426 by Lauren James, Treasurer, regarding the 2025 council remuneration and expenses. Lauren?
Thank you again, your worship, members of council. Another one of those year-end boilerplate reports, requirement of the Municipal Act to disclose a council's remuneration, as well as any expenses, reimbursements, or mileage claims. In the year, we only had one member of council submit. In the past, generally, we had one councillor submit and share the mileage or split the accommodation. Outside of that, this is just a standard report. Other thing to note, the one individual did not receive remuneration from AMO for 2025.
All right, thank you for that. Any questions for staff on this report? Seeing none, the motion would read that report TR 0426 regarding the 2025 council remuneration and expenses be received for information. Moved by Councilor Emerson, second by Councilor Chilcott. All in favor? It's carried. Item D, report CAO 0426 by Thomas Thayer, CAO, regarding transfer payment agreement, the 2026 fire protection grant. Thomas, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So similar to a report that we received approximately this time last year, we have received some money through the 2026 Fire Protection Grant Program. We're receiving $35,144.92 through the program. The program is meant to support air purifiers and balaclavas to support our fire staff at the two fire halls in Bayham. The report is coming to council because there is a transfer payment agreement attached that has to be authorized. So this one seeks the authorization of council for the chief administrative officer and mayor to execute the TPA so we can submit it and we can move forward with this grant.
All right, thank you for that report. Any questions for staff? All right, we have a motion that reads report CAO 0426 regarding the transfer payment agreement, the 2026 fire protection grant be received for information, and that council authorize the chief administrative officer and mayor to execute a transfer payment agreement between His Majesty the King in right of Ontario, as represented by the Solicitor General and the municipality of Bayham for the 2026 fire protection grant. Can I have a mover and seconder? Councillor Chilcott will move. Councillor Emerson will second. All in favor? That's carried. Item E, report CAO 0526 by Thomas Thayer, CAO, regarding the transfer payment agreement, pothole prevention and repair program. Thomas?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this is a program that came up in the back half of 2025. We were advised of the program on November the 10th. The treasurer worked with the manager of public works to get an application in. We applied for the maximum, and we were advised early this year that we'd be receiving the maximum $38,000 under the program. We are able to backdate under this program until April the 1st, 2025, which is good to know. Again, this is before council for authorization of a transfer payment agreement. For this one, we'd be looking for the treasurer and the mayor to execute the TPA. Any questions? I'm available.
Thank you very much for that report, Thomas. Any questions? All right, we have a motion and then that reads that report CAO 0526 regarding transfer payment agreement, pothole prevention and repair program be received for information, and that council authorize the treasurer and mayor to execute a transfer payment agreement between His Majesty the King in right of Ontario, as represented by the Honorable Minister of Transportation and the municipality of Bayham for the pothole prevention and repair program. Mover and seconder, please. Deputy Mayor Weiser, Councillor Chilcott will second. All in favor? That's carried. Item F, report CAO 0626 by Thomas Thayer, CAO, regarding Bayham Community Strategic Plan progress for 2025. Thomas?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this is a standard kind of like closing out the year regarding the strat plan progress that staff have made towards the current 23 to 26 community strategic plan. As council knows, there are three specific pillars. The first one is quality of place. Quality of place focuses on key areas such as core infrastructure, improved tourism, and strategies to attract and retain businesses. We focused heavily on core infrastructure again in 2025. We were required to meet compliance with Ontario Regulation 58817 for asset management planning. So we were able to bring that forward in July and again in September for approval. The financial strategy for the AMP requires a 4.9% year-over-year increase for our capital program over 25 years to bring us to the point of fully funding. We also approved general development charges for services related to roads, fire, and parks and rec. So this is something new for BAM. And the intent of development charges is to help fund growth-related infrastructure that would otherwise have been in the past supported by the tax levy. As noted earlier during the announcement, so in collaboration with Malahide and Central Elgin, staff made a couple of very large joint grant applications to support core regional water infrastructure. So we made one to the Canada Housing Infrastructure Fund and another one to the Health and Safety Water Stream of the Municipal Housing Infrastructure Program, each for the 7-kilometer stretch of the Nova Scotia Line transmission main that is jointly owned under the Port Burwell Area Secondary Water Supply System by Malahide, BAM, and Central Elgin. We were successful through the provincial program, which offers up to 73% funding, as BAM is the biggest user on the system at approximately 61%. The $15.33 million, 61% based on current flows could very well be the benefit that BAM ratepayers receive. So that is a significant amount of money. We continue to support Elgin incentives with the county. The Elgin County, they do the majority of our tourism work, so we lean on them pretty heavily for that. Elgin Incentives is the community improvement program that applies to the entirety of the county. We did work with staff to do a review of the CIP in 2025, and my understanding is this will be coming not only to county council, but also to the lower tiers for approval in 2026 under an updated program. We are also in negotiations, as you know, in regards to the lighthouse and any proposed agreement and potential transfer. Anything that does happen will come back to council in open session, as there is sort of certain protocol that we have to follow in regards to disposition of land. In regards to quality of life tends to deal with passive and active services, strategic growth, and being environmentally conscious. So BAM continued to improve its non-core portfolio. We completed the canoe and kayak launch in Vienna, which was under budget. We also worked with PK Construction and a grant that we received through the Enabling Accessibility Fund for the washroom and accessible entrance upgrades at the Marine Museum. We made some significant progress in 2025 here at this building. So council provided direction on October the 9th to proceed with the expansion. We had been working with A-Link and a couple of engineers on the tendering on that, water supply and that sort of thing before going out. And we have a contract in place. So obviously we have taken down the concession booth and we have some foundation footings in place now for the first stage of the expansion. And I'm glad to report that things are going well so far. Council has received information on the East Beach. This came to council on November the 20th of last year. So we implemented a paid parking program that financially was a success, and we have a posting out to recruit for a seasonal bylaw enforcement officer to support the 26 iteration. We were also awarded the Blue Flag status in 2025. And the Waterfront Advisory Committee has been receiving important memos and has been participating in educational events. It's worth noting at this time that we were advised today by Swim Drink Fish that the 2026 renewal, if we're successful, will be a 2-year renewal this time. So we will get 26 and 27 in one shot. We don't have to reapply at the end of the year. We believe that we'll probably be hearing from them as usual, April, May of the year. So hopefully that goes our way. And we are nearing the end of our official plan conformity review. We have the public meeting on March the 5th. That is at 6 p.m. In regards to quality of governance, we deal with, developing, retaining knowledge with the municipality to improve services, demonstrating financial responsibility, taking advantage of partnerships and joint ventures for the betterment of the municipality and the community. A few things to note here. So we are going through some significant turnover, led by retirements that we really haven't had a lot of over the last number of years. So that's led to us transitioning our water wastewater portfolio away from an internal department to the Ontario Clean Water Agency. I would note that in 2025, 7 of our approximately 24 staff positions experienced turnover. So that is unprecedented for the municipality. We currently continue 2 recruitment processes, one for a planning coordinator and one for a water system supervisor. They are both nearing completion, I'm glad to report. And we have an interim clerk who will be joining us on February the 17th, as noted earlier. We received a fire protection grant and community emergency preparedness grant in 2025 to support both of those programs. We were also able to retire the debt for the Ojibwa 15 years early. So we go into 2026 officially debt-free. So we can use that to fund core and non-core infrastructure and the needs of the AMP at council's direction. As for shared services and that sort of thing, we continue with ours with Malahide. We're 2.5 years in. We will be looking at capacity in the bylaw department this year for the 2027 budget based on discussions tonight. We also transitioned to our own standalone information technology managed service provider as well. And I'm glad to report that service levels have increased significantly there. We're very happy with the service we're getting there. We transitioned over to planning services with Elgin County. Council resolved to do that in November. That has formally started as of this week. So we had a planner from Elgin County in our office today. We will have a planner from Elgin County in our office. We project every Thursday. So if there's anyone that has any planning inquiries, we will have an Elgin County planner in the office on Thursdays. That is what we anticipate at this point. We are looking forward to wrapping up the strat plan this year. As you know, it's an election year, so the strategic plan will be included in the 2027 capital budget. It is currently in this 10-year capital plan. We anticipate including that strat plan update with an allocation of approximately $30,000, and that will be up to the new council then to move that one forward. So with that, Mr. Mayor, that is the update for 2025, available for any questions you may have.
All right, thank you very much for that report, Thomas. Does anyone have any questions? All right, seeing none, we have a motion then that reads report CAO 0626 regarding the Bayham Community Strategic Plan progress 2025 be received for information. Can I have a mover and seconder? Councilor Emerson will move. Deputy Mayor Weiser will second. All in favor? Carried. Brings us down to the bylaws. We have 3 bylaws this evening. Bylaw number 2026-003 being a bylaw to authorize the execution of a transfer payment agreement between His Majesty the King in the right of Ontario and the Corporation of the Municipality of Bayham for the Fire Protection Grant. Bylaw number 2026-004 being a bylaw to authorize the execution of a transfer payment agreement between His Majesty the King in right of Ontario and the Corporation of the Municipality of Bayham for the Pothole Prevention and Repair Program. And bylaw number 2026-005 being a bylaw to amend bylaw number 2023-034 being a bylaw to appoint committee members. Does anyone have any questions on the bylaws? Seeing none, I need a mover and seconder for the following. The bylaw numbers 2026-003, 2026-004, and 2026-005 be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. Councilor Emerson, Councilor Chilcott will second. All in favor? That is carried. We have no unfinished business. We have other business. Draft minutes of the January 12th, 2026 Waterfront Advisory Committee meeting and the draft minutes of the January 28th, 2026 Museum Advisory Committee meeting. Does anyone have any questions regarding those minutes? Then I need a mover and seconder for the following, that the draft minutes of the January 12th, 2026 Waterfront Advisory Committee meeting and the draft minutes of the January 28th, 2026 Museum Advisory Committee meeting be received for information. Mover and seconder, Councillor Chilcott, Deputy Mayor Weisler. All in favor? That's carried. We have item C, recommendations to council from the Waterfront Advisory Committee and the Museum Advisory Committee. The motion reads that the recommendation from the Waterfront Advisory Committee and Museum Advisory Committee from their January 26, 2026 meetings be received for information, and that no regular committee meetings are scheduled in October 2026. Any questions? Need a mover and seconder for that. Deputy Mayor Weisler and Councillor Chilcott. All in favor? Carried. Brings us to the confirming bylaw. So I need a mover and seconder for the following, that the confirming bylaw number 2026-006 be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. Mover and seconder, Deputy Mayor Weisler and Councillor Chilcott will second. All in favor? That's carried. And finally, the adjournment motion, that the council meeting be adjourned at 8:46 p.m. Mover and seconder. Councillor Chilcott will move, Councillor Emerson will second. All in favor? That is carried, and we are adjourned. Thank you for attending this evening.